Start.
Just reach Meridian and
Fire
Meridian. If there's still active shooting, we'll take the Bearcat, head that way.
39.
Upper Sioux, it's going to be Locust Grove and U-Stick, and they just put out a shot flyer, just so you know, on the route.
This is the 1032 podcast, where we interview experts in firearms and training with law enforcement, military, and competitive shooting backgrounds. All right, we got another episode of 1032, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, and he's been a mentor, and he probably doesn't even know it, how much of an influence he's had in my law enforcement tactical career. And I'm going to close this door here.
Yeah, you better.
There we go. All right. So we're sitting outside on a back patio doing this recording, and so we might hear a little bit of wind, maybe some barking dogs and so forth. Typically we're inside, but Pete's got a really nice little patio here where we can sit out and visit. But going back to Pete's background, he's a big tactical dude. He's done everything from Department of Energy, State Department stuff overseas in many, many countries. And he's actually one of the people that introduced me into trying to get into a higher level of the tactical world. I first met Pete in the early 90s, going to Idaho Falls over to the Department of Energy at INL. They had a Mountain States Tactical Officers Conference. And he was one of the instructors. And he's probably sorry he met me, because after that, I kept bugging him all the time, wanting more information. You know, I was young. I was just trying to absorb everything like a sponge, and I was like, I wanted more and more and more. And Pete's like, hey, if you want to get good at shooting, you need to start shooting competition. I started shooting 3-gun. And then after that, it was just constantly calling him for more information. He'd come down to my agency at the time. I think I was working for Cassia County down in Burley. He'd come down, put on daily classes for us. And then I would go up there as much as I could. Eventually, Pete kind of recruited me to go work out for DOE, and I did that for a short time before moving on to the sheriff's office up in Boise for Ada County. But anyway, Pete, say hello.
Hello, this is Pete Italiano. Good to meet all of you.
Yeah.
Good to talk to you, Raul.
Yeah, it's great. Like I was saying, it's like you probably have no idea how big of a mentor you've been. When I say it like all emotional, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, we've been friends for a long time, but
yeah.
Dude, you had such a big influence on me learning how to shoot, room clearing, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of guys that I worked with probably have no idea that a lot of things I learned from you, I passed on to guys that I worked with in the law enforcement world. Right. And I think you had a big influence on just things that happened tactically in Idaho.
Well, just a big passion of mine. I mean, I was always passionate about, learning what I could learn, and then learning to shoot, learning the tactics, and then people wanting to learn from us because we had such a great opportunity to learn from some special people.
So when you started, how'd you get started working for DOE?
So DOE was in its upgrade in 1984. DOE had to upgrade all of its nuclear energy facilities. So in their big upgrade, they started looking for people to work, and there was not a bunch of people out there that were just laying around, military guys that were looking for work. Really, back then there wasn't in 84. So when that big upgrade occurred, they were looking for people, and so they looked out into the communities. And in 1985, I applied. So in 1985, I applied to be a security police officer, got the job, went out and did security police officer. And over the years, we've changed their names: security police officer 1, 2, 3s. Security police officer 2 is the guy carrying a handgun and a rifle, patrol guy, working in and out of the government facilities here in Idaho at the Idaho National Lab. So I did regular security police officer 2 for 2 years. Meanwhile, the SRT team was, up and running, and it was something I wanted to do. I mean, that's...
And SRT stands for Special Response Team, right? So
right, Special Response Team for DOE, Department of Energy.
Basically a SWAT team.
SWAT team, yep. Protection of nuclear assets.
Mm-hmm.
So out there, it's a little over 800 square miles, give or take, of desert. And, it's the guys running around protecting the facilities, doing basic stuff also, ingress, egress, getting employees to work, badging, searching, kind of like going into the airport. You're going to do metal detectors, searching of bags. So all that stuff was in place, but they had to get more and more people doing it. So I got involved in it, became a SPO 2, did it for 2 years, got a chance to try out for the Special Response Team. Did that in 1987.
And what was the tryouts like? I know the tryouts back then were really pretty tough.
So the guys that put this Special Response Team together are all ex Special Forces guys. So they brought that Special Forces knowledge to us. We were kind of considered the little mini Delta because those guys all came from Special Forces group. So they put it together just like their stuff, but in a smaller realm. We couldn't do months and months, but it was a very, very intense tryouts. Several days in a row.
And it was in a 26-mile course for tryouts for SRT.
Actually, yeah, but we ended up doing almost like 32 on our tryout. So land navigation, shooting, team building stuff. It just incorporated everything and anything that the military side, the Special Forces guys were doing into a smaller realm. So that's how we got involved. That's how I got on the teams, got through all that, got selected, got put on a team back in 1987. We had, at the time we had 4 teams, so we got put on a team, and then you were just a regular assaulter, nothing special. And then I was actually a driver for, somebody that we know. So he was my supervisor, and so I drove him around. And when we did that, it was just training. We had the responsibilities were a response team. We just responded. Mm-hmm. So we got to go to the range every day, shoot all the time. We had explosive capabilities, so we were doing a lot of explosives. And a lot of explosives that other people weren't doing, so we were learning on the way.
So how early on was your team doing explosive breaching?
In 1987. Well, they were doing it before I got there, so they started in 1984. They started the explosive.
Because now it's kind of like pretty common practice in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But that's just seems like in the last maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys.
But for us, it's getting in targets. It was all. Hostage rescue is always the big thing, but getting in buildings and stuff. But it's also for us, it's getting in and protecting targets. So being able to get in those facilities. So we were using a lot of different explosives that most people weren't using.
So go back real briefly with your tryouts, because I think it's pretty intriguing. Because a lot of guys, especially local law enforcement guys, they don't do the tryouts as long as what you guys did, a 26 or 30-mile course. And is that just kind of a ruck? You go from point A to point B, and along the way you do shooting courses and things like that?
A lot of it is thinking on your feet. You would set up like in you're set up in groups that you would go to. You get directions to do something. You got to follow those directions, whether it's to go to a building. You got to be able to get into the building. You got to be able to receive this item and take that item back. But on the way, things didn't work out as they're supposed to. So you got to be able to think through the process. That type of selection up front, and then 800 hours of special response team actual training. So we did 800 hours of actual training once we got through that selection. Yeah, selection was running and gunning. Yep. Back then we had helicopters, so being put on a helicopter, taken out in the middle of the desert, and dropped off with a compass that didn't work. So you had to be able to get your way to wherever they were telling you to go without a compass.
So you're looking at the butte or the mountains and trying to figure out which direction you're going.
I got lucky because I'd already been a security police officer for 2 years. So by looking at the mountains and the terrain, I knew where I was. Yeah. Where other guys that hadn't been out there so long, they didn't quite know where they were going. But fun things like riding on a helicopter, being head bagged, handcuffed. And then my special occasion was getting airsick and puking into a head bag. So that's one of the big stories of my life is how I puked in a head bag. Now the head bag, obviously, so I bent over so that I could puke in the head bag, not puke while the head bag was over my head and down my shirt. So, but as soon as I started to throw up in the helicopter, they dumped us out. So maybe we got a little closer to the target.
So then, can you say kind of like what your daily duties were, or is that?
Back then, the daily duties were just to be ready to respond. So we would come to work, get in the vehicles as back then 4-man elements, and then drive around 800 square miles. Yeah. Drive around, and with the helicopters also fly around. So you'd have to do so many hours on the helicopter, take turns. But drive around the facilities. There was lots of road alarms and detection of people coming onto the 800 square miles. We would go check that stuff out. Mm-hmm. Any of the facilities having any type of alarms or issues, we would have to respond to those. And again, we're a response team, so the main security force would be there to respond to it, and then we would come in and support them. So that mission really hasn't changed, other than the targets over the years have changed, and how we get there and what we do to get to those targets.
Back in the day, what were you guys running for sidearms and?
Oh boy! So we started off with I can't even remember the very first. We did go to the H&K P7. We've shot the H&K P7. We've shot the Smith & Wesson. I think it was a 3. I can't even remember the number anymore. So we shot that. We did go to the Glocks. We are now into a SIG.
Yeah.
So we've gone through several different weapon systems.
And then
rifles were Colts back in the day.
MP5s, right?
Yeah, we shot. Well, we originally shot mostly all MP5s. But then once we started realizing we had an outer containment responsibility and that the MP5s weren't going to be able to do that for us, we actually carried a AR-15 and an MP5 into facilities.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know the time when I was there, we were running MP5s
Both,
and
yeah.
like a Car 15,
Yeah,
right?
running them both. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Sniper teams, on the outskirts, setting up with sniper rifles, and then the teams going into the facilities with an MP5 and a assault rifle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Using one to get in and one inside the facility.
Yeah.
So.
And then after several years, you guys started going to SWAT competitions, right?
So yeah, we started getting involved in more. So we actually started getting shooting. We never shot competition at first. I actually started shooting revolver competition in about 1988.
Turn it just a little bit.
In 1988, I got
it's up.
involved in SWAT comps.
Yeah.
I mean, I got involved in revolver shooting. So I got involved in shooting competition revolvers because we had a pistol team, and that's all we had back then.
So is it more like PPC?
Yeah, just a
Police pistol competition?
Police pistol competition. So I started traveling around doing that with a small team from the INL. We got to shoot all the time, so I very quickly moved right through up to being one of the best shooting and one of the best shooters because it's like all I did was practice. So
Yeah.
I got pretty good at it. And then one of the guys on team was like, "Hey, in town there's this competition, combat shooting." And we're like, "What's that?" So
Yeah.
we packed our stuff, went into Idaho Falls, and started shooting competitive handgun stuff.
Yeah.
IBSIC, USPSA.
Yeah. And then, but then as a team though, weren't you guys traveling as a team?
And that's that. So then once we started doing that, then we started looking at all these SWAT competitions. And yeah, so we ended up going to Atlanta, and I'd have to look at the dates, but I think it was like 1992, maybe 92. Mm-hmm. We went to Atlanta and we won Atlanta SWAT comp. We returned the next year and won it a second time in a row. And then when we returned the third year, we ended up second. We ended up going over to Fort Lewis SWAT comp, and we ended up winning the Fort Lewis roundup up there. So we did really well at SWAT comps. We were traveling back in those days. We were traveling to the Soldier Fortune, doing the Soldier Fortune shoots in Las Vegas.
Yeah. That was kind of a start of 3-gun, right? Wasn't it?
I would say that to me that would be the start of 3-gun because there was no 3-gun. But when we would go to Vegas to that shoot, that's what we were doing. It was combat shooting, and we were doing handgun, rifle, shotgun, and kind of mixing it up. Those to me were some of the first 3-gun. There really wasn't a 3-gun until after that.
Yeah.
Got involved.
I never got to go to the Soldier of Fortune. I went the first year that SWAT magazine took over the same match, and so it was pretty similar, same type of stages and things like that. But then I think SWAT magazine did that for a couple of years, and then it kind of fizzled out.
And then it went away. Yeah,
Yeah.
But it was fun to do. Like I said, we did really well as a team because we trained together. That's really what we did. Back then, we didn't really have a responsibility other than to respond. So while you're not responding, man, we hanging out at ranges.
Yeah. And then you went out on your own and were doing your own competitions, like individual.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that really loves shooting, myself and the other guys are like continued to shoot and do more and more. But then as I got older, the hard part is I'm young and I'm spending money on shooting, spending money on competition guns, spending money on things that cost a lot. And I'm also a big martial artist, and I've been doing martial arts since I was really young. I was also traveling and doing martial arts. So I'm traveling doing martial arts, I'm traveling doing competition shooting, and it's like this is getting hard to afford. You got young kids, and so I chose the path of staying with the martial arts thing. But I competed for about 10 years, handgun, shotgun, rifle stuff.
And your martial arts stuff, you kind of do Jeet Kune Do? Is that what you do?
I currently do study under Danny Sanos out of California, so I do JKD. I've studied Muay Thai with instructors. I've done a lot of traditional martial arts, Japanese martial arts.
But didn't you also study street fighting at one time? many times?
Yeah. No, I try not to study any of that. So we try to stay out of trouble.
You act like, I don't think you want to talk about those days.
Well, just being young and aggressive, things happen. All young A-type personalities that are, I think, in our business, that when they're young, you're cocky, and that's just who you are. But as you get older, you mellow out, so that's good. But yeah, we had fun. I mean, I did a lot of martial arts stuff. I love martial arts to this day. I still do it, still train, still hold instructorships under JKD, Daniel Santos, and I hold instructorships under Glenn Boudry, and I've held several different instructor stuff. But just the training is what it's all about, and then the ability to train with other people. It's just fun to do. I mean,
Yeah, those of us who do this type of work, I think it's just ongoing. It's just what you do, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like they say, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Martial arts is a lot of lifestyle, and I get a lot of people asking me about the shooting stuff, and I tell them,
Yeah.
I used to be big in the martial arts a lot
Yeah.
when I was younger, and I tell them the shooting stuff and the concealed carry stuff is just kind of a continuation of that.
Yeah, yeah. And then all that's changing now is that you get older. Is like, I mean, I'm not doing Muay Thai like I used to, right? I mean, we'll go hold pads and throw kicks and punches, but you have to start backing off. You can't be kicking hard, hitting hard, and getting
Might
hit
pull
hard
a muscle.
anymore. You might get hurt, and getting hurt now means they can't do other things. So I'm a little smarter than I used to be. I love the collie now. I love doing sticks.
Yeah.
I love doing the stick and knife stuff. So we continue to do that a lot.
Yeah. So when you were with the teams back in the day when you were younger, how you did that for what, 19 years initially?
No, I did the INL SRT for 12 years, and then I became an instructor at the range.
Okay.
And then I became the instructor lead, so I ran the ranges. So all total, I worked at the INL for 18 years.
Okay. And then after that, you decided to go do some contracting overseas, right?
Yes, I got the opportunity.
And that happened because the war kicked off, right, in 2001, not because of 9/11.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
a lot of the guys that were doing protective work for different types of people went off and had to go to war, so then
Yeah.
they had to go look at private contractors to do
contracting, right.
those same jobs, right?
Right. So I got some, we got a call and said, hey, we're looking for people to go do some work overseas in contracting. Like, we didn't really know what it was, but so, we had those conversations, and I just took a leave of absence because they were like, well, we just need some people full-time and we need some people part-time because we got to get this covered now. It was we need to do it now.
Yeah.
So I just took a leave of absence from the INL and went overseas. And the contract was for the State Department under the DSS program, Department of Services, Protective Services. So we did the work for them, but through a contract company. So it was the very first armed contracts that was actually really done. Now, there was always been contractors,
Yeah.
so don't get me wrong. There's always been contractors and people doing stuff, but kind of like above board, we're hiring security contractors armed to do armed work overseas.
And you're doing just like security type stuff, or were you doing?
So the first job I did overseas was Afghanistan. It was the protection for Hamid Karzai. That was the first job that I went to do for the State Department.
So you were on the Karzai detail?
Yes, one of the original members of the Karzai detail.
And wasn't there other Idaho guys on that team as well?
So they called us the Idaho Mafia. So because when they come looking for help, there was several of us that wanted to go over there, and I believe there was, in total at one time there was 6 of us, but 5 of us that left together. And went over to Afghanistan and worked. And then over there, all of us had different jobs. So, one guy was on the sniper team. I was on the detail team. One guy was on the CAT team. So we all end up in different locations based on our skill sets, which is, that's the way it works. And so I ended up on the actual protection team, walking. There was 2 teams, an A team and a B team. And I was on the A team, not meaning it was the best team, just A and B.
Yeah.
But the 2 teams, and covering them 24/7 while we were over there. Meanwhile, they're training more people to come over to help.
And so initially, did you go through a training package initially before you went out?
Yeah, we did a training package over on the East Coast in Virginia and Washington, D.C. area. Got all trained up. Trained at a couple different locations. I ain't throwing the names out of these locations because I don't, where we trained up. But the State Department ran all that. We went and did our train-ups. Again, shooting, motorcade stuff. And then the motorcade stuff that we were doing was actually kind of built to there because it's called the package that's going on right now with the President of the United States isn't the same kind of package you would do overseas. So those packages and the type of protection we did got modified. Mm-hmm. And it's called, now you'll hear people call it the K Diamond. That K, what does K stand for? Well, it's Karzai.
Karzai.
A lot of people don't know that. So nowadays they look at a lesson plan and they see this modified protection plan and they don't even understand it, or it says K Diamond or something, but
Okay.
K was for Karzai. And we modified what the State Department was doing to make it stronger for what we were doing in foreign countries. Because in foreign countries, we don't have the same protection like the president has. We don't have all the cops, and we don't have all the people owning the streets. We're a package by ourselves.
So you had just a group of guys, and you guys were in charge of the transportation of the President Karzai?
Yeah, so going over there was, trying out, there was about, I can't remember the exact numbers, give or take, but we ended up going with 50 people. And we were supposed to go with more, but then once we went through the clearance processes and the vetting processes, we lost people through that. So we ended up over there with about 50 of us.
When you say you lost people, you lost them because they didn't meet the standards of the training.
Yep, they didn't meet the standards. Their background clearance and stuff didn't go through well. Just a variety of everything. And I think once we started the training, people had to change of heart of what we were actually going to be doing. So about 50 of us went over there for a job that needed more, because we were doing everything. We were doing the outside security, we were doing the fences, we were doing his detail, we were covering everything with 50 people and rotating that. So it was not enough, but we did it. We did it.
Yeah. And so you guys were doing everything from escorting him from place to place. Did you guys have like 24-hour coverage for him, like at his house or his residence?
Yeah, so at his residence, we housed right across from his residence. He had his own bodyguards inside his house area. So he would have his own personal bodyguards with him that stayed at his house, and then we were across the street. And if anybody knows, it's called the Yellow House. It was a house that was there across the street.
And it was yellow.
So we housed out of the Yellow House. We had our little QRF ready to go. When he's in his house, we were across the street ready to roll, set up to respond. And then when he was ready in the morning, we pick him up at that front gate and walk him to his office, which was the Palace, which is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Walk him to the Palace. And then we had stations outside of his office, down the stairs, around the corner, in the front. And then we rotate stations. And then between A and B, we would swap off for lunch and dinners. And until he was done working, the guy was a hard worker, worked late hours. Many, many times we were there late into the night, walk him back to his house, get him put back in his house, and then we could go back across the street or do what we were doing. But we always had a QRF there waiting to respond to.
QRF is in
the Quick Response Force. That's what we were. And we also had the Quick Response Force out of Bagram, which was the military. They were the other quick response if we were to get hit or have something else happen. That QRF could also respond to
But
us.
you guys were not a military. You guys were just all private
all
contractors.
Guys
right?
with different backgrounds, guys with police backgrounds, military backgrounds, DOE contractor backgrounds, EMT background, anybody and everybody they were looking for, because there just wasn't a bunch of military people just around back in those days.
Yeah.
So
And so did you guys ever have a time that you were protecting him where they had an attempt on his life, on Karzai's life, that you guys had to?
So we took over for one of the SEAL teams. Literally the week before was the actual when he actually was attacked, and the SEAL teams actually protected him and got him off the X. It literally happened like maybe a week before we got there and took over for him. So there actually was an attempt just before we got there. While I was there was never any real, and there was always things that the State Department would tell us to worry about, but we never had anybody actually try to shoot to actually try to hit us while I was there. Now I was only there for a short time compared to some of them.
Yeah. But you were overseas for quite some time. I mean,
so that job right there went from me working on that, and I got hurt there toward my end of mine. I got hurt. I stepped in a hole and blew out my knee, so I had to get surgery. So I actually flew home, had my knee operated on. While my knee is up in a cast, I get a phone call from the guys that were on that detail saying, "Hey, come to Iraq. We want to do the Bremer detail." So they're all leaving that contract, heading over a Bremer detail and heading over to Iraq to the State Department side of the house. But my knee was up in a cast, and I couldn't go. So while those guys were all heading over there, I went back to the INL, and then I was getting phone calls from guys from the State Department and contract companies calling me. Back then we called them the Big Five. So those guys are all calling saying, "Hey, you want to come to work for us?" Because it wasn't DSS. It was called the Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program, and they were looking for people.
Yeah.
So they're calling me, and I'm trying to figure out who they are compared to DSS. I'm like, "Oh, that's okay. What are you guys doing?" So while I was working back at the INL, I get these phone calls and job offers, so I took one. But it wasn't going to Iraq.
Yeah.
Those guys, everybody that was going to Iraq were leaving holes in the other programs. So I actually went to Bogota, Colombia.
Okay.
And I spent 2 years working there.
You were there, yeah.
For the
I remember when you
Department
were
of State,
gone.
ATA.
Go back to the Karzai detail. What was the environment like when What was it when you landed? It was still, things were really hot back then,
Oh, yeah.
right?
2002.
Yeah.
October 2002.
Because the war had just kicked off.
Yeah, we actually left in October 30th of 2002 because it was October 30th is my birthday, and we actually flew out on the night of my birthday on an unknown flight to nowhere.
So you didn't know where you were going?
We knew where we were going, but none of the flights were on plans. I mean, it was all on a covert, all because we had all of our gear and equipment loaded too. All the guns, all the uniform, everything was all loaded on that. So it was all a middle of the night kind of thing, pretty crazy. Flew in, got in, a couple days later because we had to make some stops on the way. Flying in, you look down and all you see is dirt. It's just brown.
Yeah.
Crazy. I got photos of that, or you're just coming in, you're just like, wow, what are we coming into? You hit the ground, and there's nothing there. The airport back then was nothing. There's no fences, there's no gates. People just running around anywhere they want. It's not like you get in line to go somewhere. It's just people just running around everywhere. The bad guys are everywhere. So scoop up, get to our location, set up, living in tents, sleeping on a cot with, sleeping on floors.
Yeah. And so were you born and raised here in Idaho?
No. So my dad was in the military. My dad's was 20 years in the Air Force. I was kind of born and raised, moving around all the different locations. I was actually born in the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. So from there, we moved to other places overseas, Turkey.
But you've been here for a long time.
I moved
Idaho,
here
right?
in 1977. I was sophomore in high school.
So what was it like going from being a pretty much small town Idaho kid to going to be on the Karzai detail, jump on a plane, go overseas, and land in a foreign country?
Yeah.
What was your mind thinking? You had to be, your heart rate had to be elevated somewhat. You had to be, right? Because when you're new to this, when we're younger, we're like, oh, I want to go do this. Yeah. And then when you first get there, you're like, oh, what am I getting myself into? Or what were you thinking?
Well,
at
the
time?
thing I had was I'd spent, 17 years at the INL training.
Yeah.
And doing all the stuff we just talked about, shooting, tactics, SWAT competitions. So it wasn't like I just, woke up one day and I'm heading to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's like I've been working towards things my whole life.
Sure.
And the INL DOE system, I mean, it's not like we get attacked every day. There's very little that happens because the security is so robust. So, so really it's like you're not going into cold-blooded, and by the time that occurred, I mean, I had done a lot of family traveling overseas. We as a family, we do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
Italy, Mexico, different locations. So it wasn't really like a big scare, other than you're going to someplace where there is a war going on. That was the piece that was the most. You're not going somewhere where there's not any action. You're going somewhere where there is action.
Yeah.
And that action occurs the minute you hit the ground. So that was the scary part. But then you're with all the guys that you trained with, and that's the camaraderie, and you're doing it as a team. So that takes away. I mean, the fear is there, no doubt about it. But having the team guys with you that know their jobs, that's what makes it work.
Well, good. Yeah, I was just wondered. Well, I mean, even a couple times I went over, did my contract stuff. It wasn't like what you were doing, but landing in a foreign country, Pakistan, and I think you just never think it's going to happen to you, right? You're like, oh, I've trained, I've done this, and I think if you really feel like it's going to happen to you, you probably wouldn't go, right?
Yeah.
So,
because why would you volunteer for?
yeah. So most of us just like probably overconfident, maybe.
Yeah. Wanting to get your game on, but then once you get there, it's like, oh, wait a minute. But no, I felt like I was ready for it. I mean, I'd done my whole, since I was 24 years old, that's all I'd done is security work, training, shooting, running, gunning, and I mean, I felt good about all that. And then actually through the train ups, I felt even better because when I go to the train ups, it's like my skill sets compared to these other guys who are in the military and special forces. I mean, I could hold my skill sets with anybody.
Well, that's because DOE shooting's a big part of what you do, right?
Right. We had a lot of money, we had a lot of support, so we got good.
So is there any one incident that kind of sticks out in your mind when you were with the Karzai detail?
Probably the first incident was we were there for a couple weeks, and we had to go up to Bagram to get some ammo and get some supplies. And like first thing I did was volunteer by raising my hand saying, I'll go. Because you've been sitting in the compound just doing basic security stuff, and now it's like somebody's going to get in a vehicle and go somewhere. I'm like, yeah, I want to go, and I raise my hand up. So we put together a little group of guys with a truck and armored vehicle and a State Department guy to go with us, and off we go. And so off we go, and next thing you know, we're heading out of town on what they call the back road. And next thing you know, there's people trying to stop you and pointing guns at you, and People
Yeah.
start doing stuff. You just like, okay, this is what it's really all about. And then it's really happening. You know, you're getting that first ambush incident. So
Yeah. And are you guys
now,
just hitting the gas and
hit
going,
us.
or what?
They didn't hit. No, well, so we just kept on moving because we didn't have a choice because we had a 1-ton truck that we're taking up there, and the road is only as big as the sidewalk, so you don't have a choice. You can't back up. But everybody else, all the people are running the other way, and they're all trying to tell us to stop, but you can't. So we just keep moving, and they're pointing guns at us, and you know we're in an armored vehicle, so we can't really point guns back. So we just keep moving, and at a certain point, a guy comes up the window with his rifle in my face, and I'm just like, well, I guess we can tell them we're Americans and see what happens. So I hold up my badge and my flag, and they look into the vehicle and they nod their head, and they're like, oh, okay, and they wave us on. But they had us. I mean, if it would have been an ambush to shoot us, we'd have been in trouble.
Yeah.
Because they had the whole road blocked. They had everybody set up. They had RPGs pointed at us. They were ready. So, but once they seen that we were the Americans, we got lucky.
So
that
people wanted you
they
there?
were actually with they supported Karzai.
Okay.
So that happened to be a military group that supported Karzai. If it hadn't have been, we'd have been in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's like the second week we were there, and I'm thinking, uh-oh.
And you're like, this is what I signed up for.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Don't volunteer again. Yeah. So that was the very first one that happened, and it happened within 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
then it brings you back to reality. It's like, okay, this is not a joke. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to leave this compound and go somewhere, you better be ready. So.
Yeah, it's probably something you want to tell the younger guys, hey, don't volunteer.
Yeah, be careful.
Or be careful what you volunteer
be
for.
careful.
Right. Any other things that
Afghanistan was every day is a different day. You know, everything's happening all the time. Sometimes rockets are coming into the compound and you're scrambling to do that, or they're shooting outside the compound. But a biggest kicker was remember what your job is. Your job's not to run out there and fight people. Your job is to protect somebody. So staying inside and doing what you're supposed to do.
So is that hard for some guys who maybe came from the military where they're used to being offensive and not defensive?
Yeah, and that happened. When we first started getting rocketed, they all want to run out the gates and go get somebody. And it's like, no, that's not your job. Your job is to stay here and protect, the president, the compound. So it is hard. People have to make that conscious thought of what am I here to do? And people have to remind them because you're trying to go do something that's not your job. And when you're doing dignitary protection, you don't go chase bad guys. If they come to you, that's one thing, but you don't just take off and chase them. You protect your protectee, get them off the X, and
you got to stay with them.
Stay with them. Yeah, you don't go running around chasing people. So, some of the scary things we did was, taking the president was trying to, talk to all these different groups that were there to support him. So, we had to take him to a lot of locations where he would meet with other leaders, and he would have these conversations with leaders. So we were going into people's homes and businesses that we don't know if they're going to support him or not. And they had military people standing around with guns too.
Yeah.
So you're standing toe to toe. I mean, there's many times I stood with another guy standing next to me with a rifle that.
You didn't know if he was the enemy or.
Is he going to say, I'm going to join you, or is he going to? They say, no, we're not going to join you.
Yeah.
So you don't know, and some of them did, and some didn't. But we never had any shootouts like that. I mean, I'm not going to say that things like that happened when they didn't. There were scary moments because a lot of people are standing around with guns. Our snipers are covering us, and people that had guns, and we're covering people that have guns, and you don't know who's who. And everybody over there owns a uniform. It's crazy.
So,
everybody's got a uniform on. Everybody's different colored stuff, and everybody's packing rifles.
So it's not like the movies where the bad guys are wearing green and the good guys are wearing blue or whatever, right?
Right. Back then, you didn't know who was who yet because Karzai, the president, was trying to convince people to support him, and we're waiting to see if that's going to happen.
And did the president himself? Did you guys have conversations with him? Did he treat you guys well? Or?
Awesome guy, great guy, very respectful, very courteous. We never had any issues. Whenever the State Department said, "Hey, you can't do certain things or shouldn't," he listened to them. He never put us in harm's. He would never put us in harm's way other than what had to be done. Going to visit other leaders, Taliban leaders, or whatever they happen to be. He didn't do anything that I would say, ever put us in harm's way other than just being what we were doing. So he was very good, very respectful. I got to go back and meet him again a couple times. Because for the ATA program, I actually went back as an instructor in the ATA program because there was a training facility there. So I've got to go back and see him a couple times since then. Not like as if he would remember me, but he did know, like, oh yeah, he was part of the original team. He knew that. So.
Yeah. So you guys were the team that you were on. You guys were the first civilian team
Yes.
after the military.
Yep.
Stopped
After the
protecting
SEAL
him.
team, we went in and the SEAL team was there and we did a swap out. So they were protecting them and had been there for about 3 months. But that's not their mission. Their mission as a SEAL team isn't to sit there and protect somebody. Their mission is to get in and do stuff. They got them back into the country. Their mission really isn't to sit there and take care of them. So that's why they put us together, is to go in there and then do that long term.
So you guys were, I guess, for those who are listening, more like a Secret Service, right? Protecting a president.
Yeah.
Doing that same type of stuff.
Yeah. The difference is just in the foreign country. So how we do it in the United States and how you do it overseas is different, because you don't have the extra support.
Yeah.
So you're just one big group and you move together.
Now, you guys were vulnerable then.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever feel like, man, this is getting crazy?
A couple times when you travel to other people's village, they own it.
Just the tension you feel from everybody.
And they own it. They're already set up. They're already there. They had just as big as military as Karzai had. When Karzai got there, the military was fractured, so there wasn't a big military. He had to rebuild the military. So other people who had their own military had just as much stuff.
And so how long did he go on to be president? Because he's not president anymore,
No,
is
he? I believe he did his 2 terms. However many years those 2 terms were, I don't remember if they were like ours, but he ended up doing 2, being reelected, and then that's what all they were going to do, and then somebody else came into office.
Okay. And then, so you did the Karzai detail, what people call it PSD, right?
Yeah, PSD.
Which stands for personal...
Oh,
I don't remember. I forgot already.
Personal dignitary protection.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So after that, you come back to the site for a little while, and then you get recruited to go back to what they call the ATA program, or the Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program.
Yeah, ATAP. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I get recruited to go back, and like I said, and then when they recruited me, everybody was running over to Iraq. And a lot of the guys went over to the Bremer detail, and someone went over to the ATA program.
It's probably good you didn't go to the Bremer detail, because that didn't always work out very good.
Well, they had a great. I mean, that's there's a couple guys there that wrote books about it and how it was, one of the, best protection details. I mean, highest risk probably ever done. And I knew some of those guys are on the team, and so they did a great job. It was a very high risk. They got hit a few times, but they all did a great job. I mean, the guy. He praises them, and it was a good deal. But then the other ATA program was also going on too, and the ATA program is to set up and train, the foreign military and police, and so that was happening at the same time.
So then you continued to do the ATA program for several years, right?
I did it for 14 years.
14 years,
Yep.
And you did that in 32 countries?
We're trying to go back and look, and my wife's saying it's that many. I got flags everywhere I went, so apparently that's about what it is. But I visited countries multiple times too.
Yeah.
So I went to the countries, but different locations. So
Okay.
sometimes it's like the same country, but it's a different location. So
Different city,
yeah, different area.
different village, whatever.
But multiple times. I mean, I did it for 14 full years,
That's a long time to
and
contract.
not just on and off. It was full-time work. Many times I came home for a week and turned around and left.
And so, did you ever do, like, I know nowadays, like, they do a lot of, like, 90 days on, 30 days off. You were just gone. You didn't know when you were going to come back.
I never got those good contracts. No. So what I had was we had the in-state programs, or the in-country programs where there was an actual training facility, and then there's the MAT program, the mobile training program. A good friend of mine was on the mobile training program side, and I was kind of the in-country side, because Bogota was an in-country. They had the facilities, shoot houses, ranges, sleeping quarters. And then the MAT training was more of a go down there, build a range, build targets. They would send us the equipment and all the gear, and you put it together. So I was on the in-country one for a while, and then he got me over to his side of the house, which was the mobile, which was even harder to do because you had less, and it was, you built stuff. But it was fun. I mean, it was,
So the ATA program is what I went over that
Correct.
you kind of recruited me to go over and
Right.
do. And that's basically you go in there and you train, like, say, other military or police.
Right.
And it's usually a 6-week program, right, where they bring in a group of guys.
Yep.
And you're basically teaching them how to put together a SWAT team from the ground up, right?
Right.
So week one is, at least when I was there, week
Yep.
one was like Glock pistol.
Yep.
Week 2 was
Rifle.
M4 rifle. Week 3, they divided up and did
Sniper
sniper
breacher.
operations. And then the other half of the class went and did explosive breaching. Then they'd bring them back together, and they were in the shoot house doing CQB.
Yep.
Next week, they were doing planning operations, I believe.
Yep.
And then the last week, we're doing scenario
Correct.
stuff, right?
Yep. Yep.
We're setting up hostage rescue scenarios for them.
Yep. Just like, kind of like what we do now. All that same stuff in a foreign country. That's like exactly, you did it, so you know how that whole laid out. And the State Department, we shipped all that gear to them. The in-country programs, a lot of the gear was shipped and stored because we had Connex boxes, we had places. The MAT programs is different. We had to go to the airport and get the gear. And then we would have to transport that gear somewhere, somewhere to some training location.
So what's the difference between the mobile program and the in-country one is that they just have their own training facility?
Yeah. Like where you went, there was actually a range and there's housing and everything else. But when I went to other countries, we stayed wherever they had. And if they had a place to sleep or wherever, we stayed there. Maybe we stayed in a close town, but there was no ranges. There was no target stands. We had to build everything. We had to go buy lumber and build a shoot house, a piece out of 1/4-inch plywood and.
So not a real shoot house.
No, just whatever we could build. And the State Department would send packages for the breaching program. They'd send windows, but then we'd have to build a way to frame the windows. We'd have to build the door frames. We'd have to build everything.
So it helped to know a little bit about construction.
Yeah, so we swung hammers and they would send generators and stuff, and then we'd have to chase gas that was not good gas, and generators they wouldn't run on because the gas wasn't good. And, arms rooms that had no real locks on the doors, and build stuff like that. So yeah, the in-country programs were nice. They had everything there already that was pre-built and pre-staged, some great shoot houses, and then the MAT programs. Yeah. No, we had to build it. So two different types of things going on.
And so did you ever have any problems with like the students coming through? I hear a lot of guys going, "Oh, I can't believe you're teaching these guys because they might turn on you," that kind of stuff. Do you guys ever have anything like that?
Well, you never. We're not part of the vetting process. So here's what this is some of the best lessons learned. I call him my handler from DC. It's like his job is in his lane is this, and your job in your lane is this. And my lane was to teach. My lane's not to ask whether they're vetted or not. It's not my job. Somebody else has that job. So you just have to trust in what's going on above you, and that my job is to train these guys and do whatever missions that I'm supposed to do with them. And at the end of the day, it's you just got to trust in that.
Yeah.
So whether or not they end up being a bad guy another day, anybody could. So we have that same problem here in the United States. So.
That's true. You have cops that
end up in gangs, and they have all the training, or guys who go to the military and come home and end up in gangs. It's the same. We do know that there's some guys out there that did turn to another side, but you can't prevent that. And it's at the time and moment. My job is to train them and take them on their so-called their mission statements and do that stuff, and that's my job.
And so when you were there, did you have a specific job, or did your job change from location to location, like your primary or your team leader, your primary instructor?
I started off as a breacher. My background from the INL is exposed to breaching, so I started off as being the breaching instructor. But while you're there, you're helping teach everything else too, right? So when we're on the handgun range, I'm a handgun instructor, but then I teach the breaching portion. And I started off as just an instructor, and then I became an assistant instructor, and then I became a team leader. So I have over the years. But every time we train, if I didn't have another person to do the breaching, I had to run the breaching. I had to do the breaching program instead of just being the team leader. So it's all good. Everybody has their thing. We got guys. Everybody has to teach driving, but we always try to say, hey, who's our lead driver?
Sure.
Who knows how to do the driving? Who's our lead breacher? Who's going to teach the breaching, or teach the sniping? Who's going to be the lead breacher?
Usually, just whoever has the most experience.
And a medical guy. We always travel with a medical guy. Had a great guy attached to us, Air Force medic. Awesome for all those years. Kept us healthy. Kept the students healthy. And so we had a full team of all those guys and their skill sets, and we traveled around and helped each other out and got in and out of the countries, and always got everybody back home. Now, not always going to say we didn't get sick.
Yeah. A lot of getting sick when you're traveling, huh?
Everybody gets sick.
Yeah. Something in the water, the food.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Everybody gets sick.
Yeah. I remember, being sick a few times.
Being sick.
In Pakistan, in Pakistan and Jordan, both. And Jordan's a little bit nicer, a lot nicer than Pakistan. But I got sick both locations.
Yeah. It's going to happen, so you just plan on it. You plan on the ability for guys to be sick and somebody else to take your place. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And you just know it's going to happen. So
I know when I was, so when you were working for the ATA program, maybe outside of work, you guys are traveling, maybe going shopping, getting food. Did you guys ever have any incidents happen where you guys were attacked, or where somebody tried to,
So our group, there's always little things going on. We've been followed. People have followed us and tried to case us where we're going to see where we're at. We've always have those, but the State Department is set up for us to contact them and let them know. And they have field agents who'll come check on stuff. I've been pulled over by people who are carrying guns, and they get you to stop, or they block the road. That's happened everywhere I've gone, because every country's different, right? Like, and they put roadblocks up, and that's normal for them. And you go through the roadblocks, and that's kind of normal a lot of places. So that kind of stuff has happened where next thing you know, they're trying to get money out of you, or they want you out of the vehicles, and it's like, I'm telling the driver, no, we're gonna go, and keep your gun down.
Yeah.
But we're going. So
It's always good to carry cash on you when you travel.
Yeah, and that happens.
So I had a friend of mine just last week say he wants to go down to Guatemala to an IPSC shoot.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, do you have any advice? I go, carry some money with you.
And I've had to do that. I've had to pay.
Yeah. He's like, well, why should I carry cash? I go, because if the police stop you, you better have cash.
Yeah. Funny story is I'm always telling everybody, take cash if you get pulled over on your vacation. They're going to tell you to go down somewhere and pay it, and just say, no, I got some money, I got to go. And I'm telling everybody this, and 2 vacations ago, I got pulled over. I ran a stop sign legitly. I did not see it, because their stop signs are different.
Yeah.
They're little bitty on the left side of the road or right. They're just different. And I didn't see it, and I blew a stop sign, and I got pulled over.
Yeah.
So I paid. It's all good. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's not my
That's
country.
just the way they do business in other countries.
But in
right?
foreign countries, we've been stopped with guns. People stopping us with guns and rifles, and we're usually armed, and so it's just the tension between, we're leaving, and whether or not they're going to let us leave. So
how does the conversation usually go? You guys?
well,
let
we
them
have
know,
translators.
Yeah.
We try to travel with translators. If not, it's just shaking of the head. No,
Yeah.
and we're leaving.
Yeah.
And if you had to show a gun to leave, then that's what you.
Yeah, I'm lucky. We never had, when I was in Pakistan, we never had anything like that happen to us.
Yeah.
But there was, I don't know if you remember, there was an incident called the Red Mosque incident, where some terrorists suicide bombed this mosque, and
I've been to the Red Mosque.
Yeah, and then I believe terrorists took over the place,
Yeah.
and a big shootout between the anti-terrorist teams and the police, and they went in and basically killed like 100 bad guys, and brought the remaining bad guys actually over to the place we were at over in the police
Training compound
where we were at. Held them there for a while, but there was always some kind of, you hear AK-47 fire every day. You hear an occasional explosion, but it was not. I never felt like I was in immediate danger or nothing like that. But there was a lot of stuff.
That compound you stayed at did get hit.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well, even
years later.
Yeah.
Because it's out there, middle of nowhere, toward the power plant, toward the energy plant.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
there
kinda
was
off the road.
there was 2 other, I think, like within an hour, there was a couple other training places, police colleges, and while I was there, those other places got hit by suicide bombers while we were there.
Yeah. So that training compound, that facility you were at, when I went back another time, they had closed that down because it got hit, and we actually moved it into town.
Yeah.
And so we stayed in town and did another training, but in town, or I say in town, at another police training facility more in town than outside where you were.
Well, I know. Then later, I went to Jordan, where you and I were together.
Right.
And that place got hit,
It
right?
did.
Didn't
At the
some
gate. At the
guys
gate.
at the gate got ambushed and killed?
Yeah, some military guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've had incidences in town. We actually had a couple instructors killed there. Not by that, but they got hit by a truck. A couple of guys that I've worked with got killed there.
Now, didn't the place that we were at in Jordan, didn't they, besides those 2, or I think it was 4 guys that got killed right there at the gate, that got ambushed. Wasn't there another incident at that same place in the lunchroom or something? Didn't they get ambushed in there?
Yeah, at the lunchroom, a person that had a gun started shooting the instructors that were there.
Yeah. And did instructors die in that?
Yeah, I think one of them did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we never had experienced anything like that.
Yeah, those things happen. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in foreign countries, and
So is that mostly what you did for the remaining time? Is ATA? Was it all ATA program that you did
for
those
14 years at ATA, and I did several programs. I did the ATA, the SRT program, and then the advanced program. I did the instructor program, and I also did a VA assessment program.
Yeah.
So-
So mostly CRT, which was
CRT,
like the SWAT,
basic
CRT, right? Crisis Response Team, and then they had an advanced CRT, right?
CRT 1, which was advanced. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did.
So I
those
was
two.
there. I think when I was in I think Pakistan. I think that was CRT 1, and then I think when I was with you over in Jordan, I think that was a advanced CRT.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good time.
Yeah.
Jordan was nice because you could actually go to the malls and.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's you still got to be careful. Like there, we've been followed there several times, but at the end of the day, I just be smart.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, when
nice
our
malls,
when our
nice
hotel
restaurants.
has armed guards and you have to go
Yeah.
through metal detectors every
Now
time you leave.
you were there. You got to stay at the hotel.
Yeah.
So after they finished setting the camp up, we stayed at the camp,
Okay.
housing at the camp. So you could still go into town on the weekends, but yeah, we end up at the camp and housing on the camp, which is actually safer.
Yeah.
Even though the Hyatt was nice.
Yeah. It was a nice hotel. Nicest. I've never stayed in a place that nice
It
since
was
then.
nice. It was very nice. Yeah.
And so, what are you doing now? You how long? So you did that for 14 years, and then you came back to the States, and
So for
what'd you do
14
after
years,
coming
and
back?
then I actually did. I never not worked under the umbrella of the government, U.S. government. I actually, for a couple years, left and went to a private company out of California doing some security work for movies. So
yeah, you were doing a lot of bodyguard stuff.
So
here
I
in the
did that
States,
right toward the end there. That was the first time I ever worked for somebody else. So I went to Haiti after the earthquake for a private company, and I did some family rescue there. Did some searching for a businessman that was in the Hotel Montana that was killed in there. You know, did some search for that.
So
did some
somebody was
protection.
missing, and they said, "Hey, can you see if you can locate this person?" And you
Yeah.
went to-
Yeah. Well, so I got a call from this company that had my resume because I worked with some other folks, and he had my resume, and he works for movie people in California, and they do a lot of stuff in California at all the big shows, but they really didn't have anybody to do overseas work, and so, you know, his family member who was working with us was like, "Hey, you want to throw your resumes at him if he ever has any work?" And so I did, not thinking you'd ever get a phone call, right? But then one day I got home from a overseas contract and driving in my truck, and I get a phone call. It says, "Can you go to Haiti?" Like, well, I don't know when you want me to go, and he says tonight. I'm like, so I look at my wife, she nods her head, and I'm on a red eye, and I've only been home for 2 days.
Yeah.
So I go to Haiti after the
So your wife
earthquake.
didn't beg you to stay?
Yeah, no, she said, that's what you do for a living, go to work. So you never know when you're going to get your next job, so you got to go. So I go to Haiti after the earthquake. We fly into Dominican, and then we get vehicles all set up because we're going somewhere where there's nothing. What happened during that earthquake was horrifying. So we set up and go in there with vehicles and gear and equipment to be our own piece. And we get there, and we're renting helicopters to go rescue family members, and then we're getting asked to go back to Dominican to pick up news people, from CNN, NBC, all the news folks, and we transport them back in, get them set up at this compound where there's, security contract people securing it. And then we get a call to go check for this businessman that was in the Hotel Montana that collapsed. So we go there, it's collapsed. The bad part is there's no equipment there. There's no front end loaders. There's nothing there. So rescue people are showing up from all around the world, Colombia and Canada, and all these people are showing up with dogs and everything, but there's no equipment, so they can't really do anything. So they're bringing equipment up, so we leave and go do some other back and forth, and then they call us, say, yeah, the front end loader's here, and we go up there, and they start digging for him, and we find our guy, and we do all the stuff to bag him and tag him, go to the embassy, Canadian embassy, and get him shipped home, take the photos and everything we need to send to his company and his wife and everybody to say, yeah, this is, we got him.
So he was deceased?
Yeah, he was inside there for a good, inside the hotel that fell down for, over a week.
Wow.
So we did that, and then we get turned on to another job, and I end up in a hospital where they do, they're doing medical procedures, amputations. So I go down there, and they had no security, and gangs were coming in and stealing the food because a lot of people were donating food. So all this food and medical supplies coming into this hospital, but then there's nobody there to protect it. So gangs are just coming in and taking what they wanted. And then these doctors and nurses are going there, and they have no protection. So we end up there, me and a few other guys. So we set up the ingress-egress. And working at the INL, I understood ingress-egress.
Sure.
So I locked the facility down, set people up who had patients inside, got them in and out. Then there's nobody there to feed anybody. So we established all this free food coming in, how to bag it up and get it distributed. And we just did a lot of work there to get that hospital running. So we did that for almost a month, and it was 105 degrees, sleeping on the roof. So we did that for a while, but then I had to go back to ATA program because I still wasn't done. So I actually left there and went back to a program in Colombia and back over there and finished out a program. And then I got a call to do some more stuff with that.
So when you were in Colombia, that was a pretty interesting job. I know you helped with train guys in sniper operations and things like that.
Yeah, so I actually worked the ATA program in Colombia for 2 years. I did leave once to go to Indonesia and do a program, and then come back. But I actually was in and out of Bogota for 2 years. They had an in-country program, great shoot houses, great living facility. Everything was great on a base, outside of Bogota. So I was there for quite a while. And yeah, I did train I did do a couple sniper classes. I'm not a sniper per se, but being at the INL, I've gone through the sniper programs.
Yeah, you're cross-trained.
Yeah, I
right?
became a sniper instructor to run ranges. Well, we had a sniper bail out on us, so I just ended up teaching a sniper class. End up teaching to this day. I had heard a while back that one of the guys I trained ended up being one of the highest decorated snipers, in the Bogota military.
Nice.
So, one of those guys that just, kind of a Charles Hathcock kind of guy, just a skinny guy, and just
Probably
knows it.
you taught him some of the basics, and he probably took it
And he
beyond
took it-
that, right?
Yep, that's what he did. He just took it beyond that, and so I was over there for quite a while doing.
But
those
you had
programs.
you had an accident while you were there. You want to talk about
we
that?
don't. No, we don't talk about it.
I mean, not accident like you peed your pants.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I would prefer it if it would just have been me peeing my pants, because then it would be just a funny story. But, so it's a long story. We'll try to brief it up here. So we're running shoot house. I happen to be on top of the catwalk running it. I have another good friend of mine, and so there's actually two of us that were breacher qualified, an SF guy who was working the floor, and I'm on the top of the catwalk working, and we throw a lot of flashbangs. I mean, a lot. We were blowing up doors with explosives. We're doing some serious, awesome training to get these guys ready to go do their missions. So we had a dead flashbang, which we have all the time. Never thought a thing about it. He scooped, the process back then was scoop it up, put it in a bucket of water, let it set for 2 days, take it out, take the serial number off since I was in charge of that, write it down into our weekly reports, boom. So I go to get this flashbang that was sitting in the water, and he had shoved it back into the packing that it comes in. It comes in the cylinder, cardboard cylinder. Not for any reason. He doesn't even know to this day. Like, why did I slide it in that cardboard? I don't know. He just slid it into the cardboard, put it in the water, and put it down where we store it. 2 days later, I go to get it. I go to take it out. I go to push that out of there. I'm like, what's it doing in this? I go to cut it with my knife, but it's been sitting in water for 2 days, so it's soaked. I go to push it out from the bottom, and it won't come out. So I'm holding this flashbang in my hand at a table in the center of our area, thinking, well, how am I going to get this serial number off this thing? Another one of the guys, it's in the morning, he's coming to work, and he wants me to open the office. And he says, hey, Pete, you open the office? And I look at him, I go, yeah. And I set it down, and I start to look away, and I hear, psh. And I started to turn to look at it, like, what was that? Well, it was the firing pin. When I set it on the table, the firing pin that was already sitting on actually went off. Since it was in that compressed cardboard, the flashbang exploded. It didn't blow up like a flashbang. It exploded into many, many pieces. At the time, I was wearing a basic T-shirt and 511s, and luckily I had some sunglasses on, but they weren't like real safety glasses. They were just like little Oakleys. But that thing blew up in my face and pretty much ripped my left finger pretty much off at the skin. Exploded in my face, burning my face, the hair off my face, my eyebrows, eyelashes. I inhaled the heat and the smoke, and then it embedded shrapnel on both my eyes, cardboard, metal. So in an instance, I was blind. They medevaced me, got me into Bogota, and got me into surgery. They cleaned out my eyes, put patches on them, and said, come back in a couple weeks and we'll take them off and see what we got.
And you couldn't see anything?
No, I had patches on my eyes. So I laid and waited for a couple weeks, went back, took them off, and could barely see anything.
So for like 2 weeks,
I was blind for
you were blind
I was
for
blind for 2 full weeks, and then when they took the patches off, I could barely see any figures. Like I couldn't.
just everything was blurry,
Everything was blurry. They got better and better and better over time. I've lost some vision. So when I got back home, my eye doctor took X-rays, and I had over 100 pieces of stuff in each eye, speckles of whatever it may be. Some of them over the years have come out, and some of them are just too deep to stay. Nothing went deep enough to make me blind, but a couple pieces were close enough. They went all the way back. So yeah, that happened, and that was a bad deal. But and so come to find out, what happened was they were sending us flashbangs that were waterproof. Well, we never ordered those, and there was no way to know. So not talk about which company they were, but we called the guy, the other friend of mine that was a breacher. He called the company and said, "Hey, what's the deal? We had an accident." And they're like, "Well, do you have the waterproof ones?" And they're like, "Well, how do you know? It's like, well, you don't know. Get the serial numbers and send them to me, and we'll look it up and tell you. Like, well, that's not.
There was
a good
no
idea.
markings on them at all, huh?
No, so these were waterproof, meaning that they have that aluminum sleeve in them, and they keep them from being wet and not working. So we were sticking flashbangs in water. Back in that day, that
Yeah.
was the procedure. I mean, everybody was doing that, and because once that black powder gets wet, it's good.
Yeah. So
So-
if you had a dud, a flashbang doesn't go off, stick it in water, let it sit for a couple days. And,
Yeah, that cardboard that holds the black powder, the powder would get wet, and once it gets wet, you're done.
Yeah.
But since it was sleeved, it never got wet. And then when I set it on the table, that was enough to initiate the primer. And so it blew. But it blew up because it was inside that cylinder.
So was
pressure.
it just that sleeve that was put in that was waterproof, or the whole flashbang fuse, the whole fuse?
The whole thing is waterproof.
Okay.
So this, I mean, you know, they're designed for mostly for Navy guy, anybody doing water operations, right? So you can go into water and not have your flashbangs get wet. So, but we weren't ordering those, but that's what they were sending us, and nobody knew it. Not until then. We never would have known if that never would have happened.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting hurt over it and making some phone calls and finding out what happened. But so after that, now we got a problem because we got a Connex full of duds, and who wants to go in there and pick them up?
So did they say, hey, this is a procedure, how
So
you
we
handle a
changed
dud?
procedures. Yep, that's when even the INL and everybody I know started changing procedures. What we did over there was we started using det cord, 55 grain det cord, and we just made a snake noose on a stick, and we would just slide it around the top of the housing, the head of it,
Yeah.
and then just fire that, and that would rip the head off and expose the powder and everything. So that's what we did there. Some people started shooting them, but it's pretty easy to use 55 grain det cord if you have explosives and just make a snake noose on a 5-foot stick.
And just blow off the head on
And
that
just blow the head
flashbang,
off.
huh?
Yep. And once that head is separated from there, you don't have any worries.
And then you can just dump the powder out?
Yeah. Now, if you want to shoot it again, you can sure stick another piece of det cord in there. We did that for a while, put another piece of det cord, 2-inch piece inside it, and shoot it again. But realistically, once that head is separated, it's just
Why not just
exposed.
freaking blow the whole thing up?
Yeah. Well, you could.
Yeah.
You just now you'd be more shrapnel.
Yeah.
Now you're blowing up a piece of
True.
metal, and where if you just spin that head off, you're good to go. So
Yeah.
that's what we changed it to.
Well, that's pretty crazy. That's
Yeah.
pretty scary.
It was it was a bad time.
Yeah. Especially anytime you're in a foreign country, man.
Yeah,
And
foreign
you need
country,
you
I'm
need
blind.
medics.
And I'll, credit out there to Bogota. That they did the surgery, top notch doctors, great job.
Did a good job, huh?
Yeah, great job. Cleaned my eyes out. You don't want to hear about that, how they scrape your eyes
Sounds painful.
while you're wide awake. So, and then we had a great medic on staff. Since we do a lot of explosives, we actually have a medic on staff while we do anything. And so we had a med shed that was fully outfitted. The base that we work at actually has a full-time doctor. He had just walked into his office when the explosion went off. So he came out his door. So I had a doctor, I had a medic, and then one of the guys on our team was a 18 Delta medic.
Okay.
So I actually had 3 guys
You had a
on
lot
me.
of medical guys right on you.
Instantly. So they took me into the med shed. The doctor, the guy that was there, the young doctor that was there, he is actually owned him and his dad own a facility in Bogota, and so they do plastic surgery. He actually
Yeah.
put my hand back together while I was on the table
Oh, wow.
at the camp.
So you almost lost your fingers?
Yeah,
or-
it pretty much took this left index finger off, and you see the scarring on that.
Yeah.
So luckily that's not my shooting finger.
You got pretty good use of it now, though. Right?
Yeah, there's still metal inside my finger.
Yeah.
I had an X-ray not long ago, and there's metal fragments inside there and up inside my hand. And there's one that acts like it wants to come out, but it never does.
Yeah. So after Columbia, then you went on to doing the other ATA stuff where you kind of traveled around the country.
Yep.
And then after you ended doing your ATA stuff, doing all your State Department traveling, you came back to the States and you were doing some VIP bodyguard
Yep.
type stuff here too.
Yep.
You did some for some Hollywood people and
Yep, I went to Mexico City and did two different jobs in Mexico City for movies, moving people around. And then I did Mexico City, and then I went over and did South Africa for a big movie, and did protection for the actor. And then I went over to Phuket, Thailand, for another movie. Actually, it was a reality TV show
yeah.
that I did in Phuket, Thailand. Gee, I gotta have our time.
What kind of movies? Wasn't adult films or nothing like that, was it?
No. The one in Phuket was a reality TV that's on. It was like the 3rd season of this reality.
But the one
TV
over in
show.
Africa was a big box film, right?
The one in Africa was a big box film. It was fun. I was over there for 4 months. It was South Africa, Cape Town, awesome place.
Yeah.
The other two were in Mexico City. They were doing movies in Mexico City, and so before the actors get there, taking the staff out, looking at locations, just driving them around, making sure they get in and out of where they're supposed to be. And so I did 2 of those.
And then you were doing teaching classes, right?
Yep. In between that, I was actually living in Idaho Falls, but doing a lot of teaching out of Boise. So I had all my targets and all my setup in a trailer, and I was teaching classes there, teaching classes in northern Idaho, just kind of everywhere, just kind of moving around teaching. And then I got an offer to come back to Idaho Falls and run an indoor shooting range as the instructor to run their training program.
Yeah.
At first, I turned it down because I was actually headed to India, to New Delhi for a 5-year project for a company. And during trying to work that out, I'm just like, I'm tired.
So you still didn't want to travel no more,
I'm tired,
huh?
yeah. I'm not going on the 16th, 17th year of being overseas, and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I turned him down and called this company back here in Idaho Falls and said, yeah, I'll come to work for you. So they opened up an indoor shooting range here in Idaho Falls. I became the training director of the facility, and man, we started running all kinds of classes. Individual classes on the weekend, shooting, handgun, rifle, you name it, we were teaching it.
Yeah.
It was a great time. It was a good time. And then I had an opportunity to buy the store, but it was like I didn't really think that was for me to buy a indoor shooting range and run it. So I got a job offer to go back out to INL, so I took that instead. I think it was a good move. I really enjoy the INL. I enjoy the security and stuff out there.
Yeah.
So did that. I started working. Actually, what I started doing was simulators. They had purchased shooting simulators and driving simulators, and I had been running the simulators overseas. So I was running their simulators for training, and then they had some movement in the SRT, and so that's when I got offered to be the SRT major, and oversighting the SRT team.
So, SRT major, you oversee. You're like a SWAT commander, basically, right?
Well, so there's a SWAT commander above me, and then there's me. So I'm the first line supervisor of the 4 of the supervisors on the teams.
Okay.
So
you oversee the 4 teams.
I'm chasing everything that they do, and then passing all that up to a manager.
And so you oversee like their training, what they're doing day to day, their missions that they have for the day.
Yep. Making sure all the training's getting done. And we have a lot of training out there, as you know. A lot of computer training, a lot of quals. We qualify every 6 months, shoot house. We have to do all of our heavy weapons. So there's a lot of qualifying that goes on, but there's also a lot of training that has to occur before that qualifications occur. You can't just come back when it's time to qualify. So being in the shoot house, live fire, being in the shoot house with DMC, being on the range shooting heavy weapons, 50 cals, doing all that stuff. Explosive training, in between all quals, making sure everybody's trained. So, and then, doing testing on back shifts and weekends.
Yeah.
You always want to spot check your guys, see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then I chase a lot of lesson plans and safety plans, making sure we're doing things right. And then I make sure they're doing it right.
Yeah, that's one thing about the federal government, man. You guys have a lesson plan for everything.
Yes, we do. And if you need one, we got it.
Lesson plans and policies.
Yeah. But that's what, at the end of the day, what kept us above everybody that's out there is you might be doing something, but we have it written down on how it's done and how it's done safely. Not to tell anybody else they're not, but our policies, procedures keep us, I think, from having major accidents. So, and not that we haven't had our few, but
yeah,
I think when I go to other places and I see what they're doing, I'm scared for them.
Just waiting for an accident to happen.
Yeah, I'm scared.
So you feel like a lot of probably law enforcement agencies, sometimes they can be a little bit too lax. They should have a few more safety procedures in place. Or?
I don't know if it's about as much about the safety procedures as much about it's having a person that does that for you.
Okay.
So, when I've helped people train, what I've offered them is I'll come be your safety guy. I'll get your DMC set up. I'll get your equipment set up. I'll do your checks. I'll search your guys. I'll get them into the play area. A lot of guys don't have that middleman to watch out for that. It's all the cops are there and they all want to train. Nobody wants to be the guy that has to do the work, the other work. So I think that's usually what they're missing. Somebody that's not part of that can step back and look at them and go, I need to search you before you go into the play area.
Somebody look at it from above and say, hey, what kind of safety things do we need to look for?
Yeah, because everybody's there to get trained. They want to be the runner and the gunner. And who wants to do that?
Yeah.
So, well, guys
Yeah.
like me who've already done it and don't want to do it no
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, and the younger guys are wanting to run and gun. They're not all about that. They
And
just
I've got a
wanna show
chance
up
to
and
help.
shoot.
Like I said, some of the people you work with, I've come down and done some of
Yeah.
that for them, and it's fun for them because they don't have to worry about it. Somebody else worries about it.
Yeah.
So,
And recently, I know you're not running and gunning anymore, but you oversee stuff. And recently, you guys just had a team go down to Utah and win state SWAT competition down there, right?
yes, they did. They did a great job. They've been going to this competition a few times in the past on their own, non-sponsored. And the last couple years, myself and my manager, we've gotten it sponsored, so we got to send a team sponsored, meaning we can take all of our gear from work.
Yeah.
They've gone down the last couple years doing okay, but this year they smoked it this year.
That's awesome.
And then they've got an invite to go to Orlando.
They're going to go down to the SWAT Roundup in Orlando,
SWAT
Florida.
Roundup in end of October, 1st of November.
Well, that's good because that's a big competition. That's a worldwide competition. They get teams come in from all different countries and so forth. Pizza wanted guy.
Yeah.
Everybody's always trying to get a
Actually,
hold
my
of Pete.
boss looking for me.
Yeah, he's probably going, hey. So I'm up here today, up here in Idle Falls, because they're having a 40-year reunion, and they invite everybody who's ever been on the team. 40-year reunion is in the team was put together back in 1984, right? And so anytime there's a bunch of SWAT guys, tactical guys, and I can go socialize, man, I want to be there.
That's
So
where Raul's at.
that's right.
So it should be a fun time. I mean, like I say, we'll be starting around 4 o'clock, and we'll be hanging out, and all these guys meeting that haven't seen each other for a long time. And
Are they going to be serving alcohol there? I don't drink.
I do believe, yes.
But I'm just.
Yeah, I heard beer.
I'm going to have to be the middleman. I
Yeah.
hope the cops don't get called or nothing like that.
I hope
so.
not too. So a lot of A-type personalities showing up, old and young.
Yeah.
So. But it's great. It's awesome. A chance to get together with all these guys who have something in common, which is they've been on this special response team at the INL.
Yeah. Well, Pete, you've had an interesting career, man. I mean, from when you were a young guy getting on SRT to doing this private contract stuff overseas, the Karzai detail, working the ATA program, doing the bodyguard stuff you do, and then I know you're really big in the martial arts. You're doing the Jeet Kune Do stuff with Danny Inosanto and Glenn, and man, you just never quit.
Nope.
You're still doing that stuff.
Even when I get hurt, I show up.
Well, like I say, it was good to be able to sit down and talk to you about your career because I say you've been a mentor for me for many, many years, and probably don't know it, but there's a lot of guys that I've been able to pass on the things I've learned from you, and I told them I made it up. So
Give yourself a pat on the back. But see, here's the difference. I'm good with that because you put in the work, you put in the time. You hear something from somebody else, and it's awesome that they taught you that. But if you just throw it away and don't do nothing with it, then so what?
yeah, it's all about when we learn something. It's all about passing it down to somebody else.
But you
right?
made it better.
Yeah.
You didn't just take it. You made it better.
Yeah, and then other people
So-
make it
and then
better,
other
and
people
it keeps
make-
getting better and better,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So
But yeah, you've
that's
been
awesome.
a big influence, I think, in the SWAT community in this valley, in this state, and people not even knowing where it comes from. But
Yeah.
a lot of things that people have learned, it's come from you, passed down from other people. So really appreciate your friendship and appreciate you having me here. So
Well, you too. So make sure you cut this tape up so it sounds really good. I don't think I cussed one time.
yeah, that's pretty good, especially for you, Pete. Yeah.
Well,
so
thank
what
you. I appreciate it.
What I typically do, this goes on raw. I don't, unless there's something that you say, hey, I probably shouldn't have said that. It's going to go on just as is. So.
I can't tell you what I said, so it's all good.
All right. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Take care, Ro.
Yep.